Okay, welcome back to the Are You Strong show. I am very excited about today's guest. And before I introduce her name, I'm going to tell you a little. I have a very long list here of all the accolades, and I want to get them out, and I hope I get them right. But uh, this person is a elite performance mental mindset coach, expert in helping organizations, coaches, athletes, teams achieve their potential, both on and off the field, which is so important, especially off the field, right? With the mental thing. She's an author, an international speaker, which is so cool. She's got a degree in sports medicine. She's an extreme focus certified mental mindset coach. Works with, corporations, colleges, high school sports programs. And what I thought was really cool when I saw on her background is the U.S. military. I want to find out more about that, right? And sports specific, camps, specialty camps. Owner of a company called Q Life, right? Or it's elite performance mindset coaching, helping teams, athletes, organizations transform their mindset to unlock their full potential. Welcome to the show, Jen Graffice.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
It is such a pleasure to have you on the show. And I know we spoke, I don't know, it's got to be over a month or so ago and just let everybody know, I saw you on social media. So anybody who says, hey, does social media really work? It works, and I think I found you on TikTok, but
You
I
did.
see you on TikTok and Instagram.
Yeah.
And when I saw the work you were doing, I'm just like, man, I got to get this woman on this show because what you're doing just seems so cool. And I love the mindset stuff, because when we talk about athletes, we talk about how much they work on their bodies,
Mhm.
but they don't spend a lot of time on their minds. So before I rip off a million questions I ask you, why don't you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, thank you for such a great introduction. As you said, I'm an elite performance and mindset coach for athletes, coaches, organizations, and teams. And my background's in sports medicine, health, wellness, and nutrition, advanced personal trainer and fitness pro, fitness expert, turned mindset coach. So I feel like they all just kind of flow together. And that's kind of how I came up with Q Life. And originally, when I started, I went from being a athletic trainer at the high school level, excuse me, to when I moved to Arizona, then I was a fitness director and I ran the athletic club and spa for a corporation for a master plan community for a whole lot of years, a couple master plan communities and country clubs. And then as my kids were growing up in sports, I just kind of missed that working with the youth and getting back into it. And I've always been a huge personal development junkie. So
Okay.
I love to learn how to grow and challenge your mind and how can you elevate yourself. And as my kids were growing up and I was watching them then in sports, then of course I became the team trainer and then the team motivational, speaker and
Team doctor.
yeah, all the things. My son was a pretty competitive football player. My daughter was a competitive cheerleader. So it just kind of by default, mom's always involved and wanted to be a part of it. And I really missed it. And so I started studying more about it and more about it. And finally, I had enough of my corporate job and I took that huge leap of faith and launched Q Life. So
Cool. So I always ask this question is when was the part of your life? Was it middle school? Was it high school? Was it college where you knew that, coaching, sports, that whole athletic mindset was going to be part of your life? Like, when did that start to click and say, hey, this is the direction I want to go?
what a great question. It's funny. I actually show kids a folder. If I had it close by, I would grab it. But um, I've always I've just always loved that that personal development and that quest for knowledge and to learn new things. And I was part of a mastermind, and we had to write down our top 100 dreams. I
Mm,
think it was like way back in like I don't know 2007, 2008, and my number one was to be an entrepreneur and work for myself. I didn't quite know what that meant, but and then 2012 was when I started. So I talk and teach a lot about the power of the written word and dreaming and manifesting and how to do that. And so it's kind of cool to go back and look at my top 100 dreams and all the
Yeah.
highlights of all the things that have come to fruition.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think I was always in me. I loved quotes. I loved motivational. I was always reading books about that in high school, as a softball player, as a gymnast. Like, it always like fascinated me. I don't know that I would have said I'm probably going to be doing that for a career back then, because you're so focused on money and
Yep.
family and those kinds of
Yep.
things. Thankfully, I got wrongfully terminated, and I think that was the thing that pushed me over the edge and just made me say, you know what? And I've been fortunate enough to all the jobs that I've done. I have loved them. In the fitness industry, you get to help people. I ran an athletic club where I had a staff of 35, and all the different, departments within the personal training and group fitness and all of that
Yeah.
stuff. But um, finally, one day they wanted to terminate me, and it was unfortunately wrongfully. And I fought it. And when I fought it, I worked for a management company. And the management company, I had an A+ rating. I was the keynote speaker for all the rest of the management companies. But if you know anything about HOAs and boards, the board president didn't really care for me. And so they were just trying to find a way to get me out. And when they tried to terminate me, I fought it. And it just bought me more time, basically,
Yeah.
because they were just going to reorg. And in the time that they figured out how to reorg and get rid of me the correct way, I launched Q Life. And so it was a great, huge God blessing. And
Yeah.
I don't know that I would have had the courage to do it had that not happened, because it lit a fire under me that I was like, you know what? I'm never going to let anyone tell me my worth again. And I'm just going to go out and create it myself. So
It's almost like the best bad thing that could ever happen to you.
100%,
Right.
100%.
You know?
And you know what? That's how we become. And I teach that. Now that you say that, it's interesting. I teach that to all of my clients, coaches, athletes. Like, we don't become resilient by doing minimal things. Like, typically it's a very hard, tragic, something bad has happened that truly makes us who we are. So
it's literally when you get punched in the face, it's like, how do you respond?
yeah. And those are the best lessons. Those are the best
Yeah.
teachers, for sure.
Yeah. Now, you said something before, the power of the written word.
Yes.
I believe that. I live by it. I carry my own stuff around, right? And
So do I.
yep.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly like, whoa, that was cool. Or I'm writing about what just happened or whatever. Can you talk about that? Because I try to coach people on doing that too. And
Yep.
some people are like, but you believe in it. I believe in it. Can you talk about that so people can
Yes.
understand what that really means?
Yes. So that's perfect. So I have 5 pillars of a Q life. So I teach about Q life, Q mind, Q body, Q soul, and Q community.
Wait, hold on.
So
I want to write that down. Say that again.
yeah, so it's Q life, Q mind, Q body, Q soul, and Q community.
Okay.
So everything that I do revolves around one of those 5 pillars that we have within our life, right? And Q Life is all about I teach full camps on the 5 pillars of Q Life. I just got back from Florida teaching
Yep.
one of those to one of the teams. And the Q Life is all about dreaming and goal setting and really setting a plan for your life. So I love to teach about it, because when you write something down and you say it out loud, from a neuroscience perspective, guess how much more likely it is to happen?
Like 90%.
78 to 80% more likely to happen if we
Yep.
simply write down very clear, very concisely exactly what we would like to have happen. And it's not a I wish, I want. It's a I am, or I have, or I will.
I will.
I'm
Yeah.
going to be, or I am.
Yep.
So when we write that down, and I'm very specific, because this thing, typing it on our phones, isn't as effective because we're just typing letters. So
Right.
it is the power of the
It's
handwritten
the whole
word.
thought process and it coming out, right?
Yep. And the written word, how it gets put into our subconscious brain.
Mm-hmm.
So every single one of my clients has their own notebook or journal specifically for our work together, and only our work. And then I give them a journal assignment every single week on something, whether it be a positive affirmation, whether it be writing our dreams and goals down, whether it be writing a story about what we want to have happen in the next few months, whatever it is. So yes, the power of the written word is so, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that is so cool. And the other thing I've been taught is that when you write it down, it brings your level of commitment up. But
mhm,
when you share it with other people and tell them, then it goes even to a whole nother
whole
level.
nother level.
Because
Yeah.
now you got people coming back and say, "Hey, well, Jen, how's that going? How'd you make out doing that?" So their expectations, you're going to get it done. So you're like, I got
Done.
to get it done because I told them.
Exactly. Exactly. And not only that, by putting it, the written word out there and talking about it, then what does it do to our subconscious? Now we've put it in our subconscious. I want to be a world champion. I want to be a starting
Yeah,
quarterback. I want to have $1 million, whatever it is. Then guess what happens when we go to bed at night? Our subconscious, everything that we do and we write down wants to align us to where we want to go. So now our subconscious is going to start nudging us and giving us little gut hits and gut instinct clues of, hey, you said you wanted to be a world champion. What are you going to go out today to do to make that
yeah,
happen? Maybe
yeah,
you need to go to the gym. Maybe you need to watch some film. Maybe you need to, and those aren't just like gut. I mean, that's your subconscious helping you go
yeah.
into the direction that you want, that you've told it you wanted to go.
And you know what I find with that is when my subconscious gets involved, it's hard to go to sleep. Even though like your subconscious, you're really not knowing what's going on. But it's like I'm waking up in the middle of the night thinking of stuff.
Yeah.
Or I'm also next, it's 5:30 in the morning. I got to get up and get this done.
Yeah.
You
Do
know,
you also have so do you also have like super creative thoughts? So there's a brain science behind that. Like, so do you find that you have super creative thoughts for either your business or like, I really need to go do that, or this sounds amazing, and they're like where your brain is like on overload, but also very creative and maybe things you want to do for your show or for your work or
well, it's funny. I took a personality profile. We actually have one we use here called Culture Index. I don't know if you ever heard of
okay,
it.
I haven't.
And it talks about your creativity, if you have it or not. And
Mm-hmm.
I score very low on the creativity, very low.
Mm-hmm.
But I score very high on the drive.
Mm-hmm.
So people say, well, you can get a lot of things done, but you can't create anything. So what I find is I get stuck on a thought, and that thought sticks in my head, and it sticks in my head, and it sticks in my head until
And
I
then you just go do it.
get it done,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, also, what happens is typically, excuse me, typically right before we go to bed and also right when we wake up, we're in a different brain state. It's that theta state right before we fall asleep that we actually access 10 to 20% more of our brain. So like
Okay.
Q life actually came to me in the middle of the night. So I have all kinds of creative thoughts. Again, you might not be super creative, but you're still able to access 10 to 20% more of your brain when it comes to doing anything.
Yeah.
So I have a notebook by my bed, and if it's something really, really good at 3 in the morning or at 4 in the morning before I wake up, I actually will go out and voice dictate it because I'll forget it because
Yeah.
you're in a different brain state. And so I'll just voice record it really quick while I, go into the next room, and then I'll go back to bed because I don't want to forget about that. My Q Life
Yeah.
camp, the 5 pillars, the name of Q Life all came to me literally in the middle of the night.
That is so cool.
Super cool. Yeah.
It's one thing I don't have. I don't have a notebook or a recorder next to my bed. I should probably do that,
Yeah.
you know?
I don't
So,
have my
so,
phone next to my bed, so that's why sometimes I have to get out and go get it.
all right. So all this sports background you have, right? All this athletic stuff. How did you end up in the mental side?
Hmm. I think it's just kind of by natural evolution. Um, because of my background in personal training, and as a personal trainer, as a personal trainer, you're creating change within habits to become healthier, to become have more muscle. And so a lot of that requires behavioral change and mental mindset change and how you look at yourself and what you're trying to accomplish from a physical level. It still takes some mental strength to become
Yeah.
physically healthy as well. And then as I, again, with the personal development side, wanting to learn more, grow more, as my kids were athletes and young, and I started watching the dynamics between them and the coaches. And my son was on a football team called the Soldiers, and the head coach was literally an ex-military guy. So he was very drill sergeant-ish. And some people didn't like that because he
Right.
was very hardcore, but it was also, yes, ma'am, no, sir. You look people in the eye. I mean, it
Yeah.
was, and our kids thrive. I mean, kids do thrive under structure. And it was very line your helmets up the exact same way. It was, they were very, very organized. And then I saw some kids shut down with that kind of coaching. So I really started getting interested in that. And then I just started studying, and I went and took an extreme focus, course up in Utah. And of course, the internet is a beautiful thing because you can pretty
Yep.
much find anything that you want. And so I just slowly started transitioning from the physical side to the mental side. And when I launched Q Life, because I didn't have many clients, I did personal training. So it was kind of like I did half personal training and then half mental mindset until I got my entire book of mindset clients. And then now that's all that I do. So, but
That's
they
cool.
do go hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the physical, the mental, spiritual, all the things that, I
Yeah.
mean, that makes the whole person. So it's kind of, my tagline for the beginning of my years was building a better body from the inside out. So,
Mm, that's cool. I like that.
yeah.
So the physical and the mental, you think about what comes to me for some crazy reason is body image,
Okay. Yep.
right? And
Mhm.
identity,
Okay.
right? So when you're thinking from an athletic standpoint, a lot of times, the public says, well, body image is just women. No, it's not. I can't tell you how many men I've interviewed on this show, right? And just that I know, and they're so concerned about the way they look and everything. Can you talk about, the barriers, let's say, for lack of better words, or the commonality or the issues that go on with athletes or the people you work with around body image and really the identity of who they are in their sport?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, body image, like you said, can be for anyone, and men, women, and body image. I used to use this huge example of kind of be careful what you wish for, right? Because we were talking about the old the old models that were super skinny all the
Yeah.
time. And I have a picture of like a super skinny model that's on the cover of Victoria's Secret magazine. And then I have a picture of someone else that's maybe in the Sports Illustrated, a little bit more athletic, or someone that's overweight that is just totally within normal limits of everything. But what if I told you that Victoria's Secret model was doing cocaine and smoked and was
Right.
starving herself? Do we really want, is what does that mean, and how does that serve us? Because that, we're not healthy in that way,
Yeah.
right? So understanding that body image means different things to different people, and more than
Right.
anything, just helping specifically girls and athletes that I do work with that have body image issues, is that whole self-love and loving yourself and loving yourself for who you are. It doesn't mean that if you'd want to get in shape and you want to have more muscle, or if you want to have less body fat. For me,
Yeah.
when I was a personal trainer, it wasn't about how much you weighed. It was about your body fat percentage,
Yeah.
because you could weigh a certain amount and have zero. Like, I had a 98-pound orthopedic woman doctor, and she was 45% body fat because she didn't do anything. She didn't exercise. She was too
Yeah.
busy doing surgeries all the time. And so that's not healthy. That's not
No.
healthy. And she couldn't keep up her stamina for even her job to stay on her feet
Yeah.
all day. So to me, it was more about, do you have a healthy body fat percentage? Do you have enough muscle? I do a
Yeah.
huge nutrition lecture to all of my athletes in regards to Q body, and how much protein do you need to be eating, how many carbs, what does that mean, how do you balance it out, how does it affect your blood sugar, how many of you
Yeah.
crash after you so-called eat something healthy like a salad, but you're still crashing because you didn't have enough protein.
Yeah.
So understanding all of that is like all part of it. um
Right.
and it goes back to the self-love, so then that takes a little bit, some deeper work as well.
Yeah. So how about from an identity? I talk to so many athletes, Jen, that they whatever sport they're playing, they start at 5, 6, 8, 10, and then they're playing through, I don't know, 20, 22, 24, 28, whatever, and it ends. and their identity of their next step in their life. And I coined this phrase. I don't know where I got it from. I don't I like a creativity. I can't create anything. I heard it somewhere and I stole it. But athletes die twice.
Hmm.
At the end of their career, they die. The challenge is they got to live with it, and then they die in real life. But
Right.
there's so many athletes who, when their career is over, they take the cleats off, the helmet off, the mask off, the whatever, their identity's stripped. Can
Hmm.
can you talk about that?
Well, I would say it's interesting because I actually feel like it's really important to start talking about that now before their careers are over, right? So when we can start to have early conversations about, I'm not just preparing you to be an elite athlete on the on the field. We're also talking about how are you going to be an elite human being when you're off the field? What does
Mm,
fuel your soul? How do you connect with people? And yes, this is an incredible, beautiful, perfect passion of yours right now. And it's also probably just a chapter. So who do you want to be in that next chapter? Because we're constantly evolving. So we may evolve from the athlete to the entrepreneur, where we're going to draw forward a lot of those amazing lessons that we learned as an athlete from our coaches. And now we're going to have to use them in our next chapter or our next part of our life, so that it doesn't have to be this like strong cut thing where like I just died and now I don't have an identity.
yeah.
So, and so many of the pro athletes and college athletes, and of course with the world of college and high school athletes and the NIL and all of that kind of stuff,
Oh,
it's creating a whole different demographic where they're already in a business. So now
right.
it's not even about the passion anymore. A lot of times it's more about the money and where I need to go. um, and so they're learning about those real life lessons like hardcore right now,
Yeah.
as early as high school. So
Right.
now we really have to find things that takes you to the Q soul, right? Find things that
Mm.
fuel your soul on and off the field, in and out of whatever it is that you're doing, so that we start, I don't want to say balance, but you start to create possibilities that you could see for your future.
I love what you just said. Fuel your soul.
Mm-hmm.
And I I kind of think I say something similar around athletes. When you're out on the field, a court, or wherever, you have this feeling, right? You can't, and you can't explain it.
Mm-hmm.
If I go back to my playing days prehistorically, right, a long, long time ago, I remember being out there and like it's like the exuberance, the euphoria. It's like it's crazy, right?
Right.
So I tell people, I said, find something that gives you that same feeling. Find
Jeff,
something that's going to give you that
I
same
literally
emotion.
I was literally just going to say that, because I came home and I have a coach, my coaching call, and I was on fire this weekend. And I'm not trying to brag, but I was in that
You're
state.
jacked up.
I was literally in that state, and it was like the coaches, it was a new client, and the coaches were all about it. The owner was all about it. They were like sponges, feeding off of me. And it's like when everyone's in the present and everyone's committed and they're all about it, then I want to elevate myself and I
Yeah,
want to bring my best self. And
right.
by the end of the weekend, the owner was like, wow, like I feel like you just like gave us your all. And I
Yeah.
was like,
And you
honestly,
were probably worn out,
and
right?
I
At
was
the
like,
end.
honestly, I did. I'm exhausted
Yeah,
and I'm totally exhilarated,
right,
because it just fuels me. And I
right.
have that feeling. I know that I was in the flow state. I was
Yep.
totally just like I was on a roll.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it feels good when, yes, I believe that everyone, I mean, define your Q, live your Q,
yeah.
right?
It's hard for people. It's hard for, let's just say, the athletes transitioning out of their sport to find something that gives them that same sense of belonging, energy, focus, whatever they're looking for. And I
Mm-hmm.
just call it's just like find the euphoria that you had before,
Mm-hmm. Right.
and you'll find it,
Yeah, you'll
you
find
know,
it.
and
It's just a matter of their belief system as well, right?
yeah.
Their belief system on what does that mean? What is your passion? There's all kinds of books out there to help you find that passion, so that again, I believe that everyone can define their Q life and actually go live it and make money doing it.
Mm,
If everyone just did what they loved and actually were able to create a career or a lifestyle and make a living of it, wouldn't
Yeah.
we all be so incredibly happy? Because it's not like we're punching a clock 9 to 5 and just
Yeah.
waiting for vacation. Like,
Yeah.
I don't ever feel like I have to work. I just get to go travel around and deliver a message
Well,
that makes me happy too.
yeah. So let's talk about that for a second, right?
Yeah.
You talked about the best worst day of your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is when were told to move on,
Yep.
right? And I think people don't have the confidence sometimes to make that transition because they
Mm-hmm.
have the thought, I'm thinking about doing, I thought about it, but now you start thinking about it and you start thinking about all the what ifs. What if it doesn't work? What if this, can I? And the confidence starts at, okay, it's up here, then it goes way down here.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk about that when you're coaching your clients about confidence and building confidence so they can do what their mind says they can do, but then all of a sudden their heart says, I don't want to do it.
Right. So at the root of almost everything, from my baseball player who suddenly is in a slump with his hitting, to the quarterback who is now second string, to the cheerleader who has a mental block and suddenly can't do a skill, to anyone who has performance anxiety, to anyone then who thinks they can't and suddenly they used to be able to do something and now they're like overwhelmed with all of
Yeah.
those thoughts. The underlying 99% of every single one-on-one client that I have, the deep rooted issue is self-doubt or lack of confidence.
Mm.
And I always talk about how, like, it's fine for coaches and parents just to be like, hey Johnny, just go be confident, right? Just go be confident. And the kids are, and we're all going, even us as adults, right? We're like, I wish I could be confident, but I don't, but how? It sounds great until those thoughts start to come and we start to get overwhelmed, and then
Yep.
we don't know what to do. So the biggest thing is starting to understand our brain and learning how to wire what we fire. So we
Mm.
have to take conscious, we have to start really honing in on what do we want to put into our brain? What are we going to allow in and what are we not going to allow in? Because that becomes, if we picture our brains as an app, right? What are we going to let the algorithm take us to? Is it going to be all the negative stuff? Is it going to be we only let positive things come in? And we have to be responsible to help rewire it. And initially, it's really, really hard. So I actually have an exercise that I do with kids and coaches and full organizations. I just did a nurses retreat. We talked about this at a nurses retreat, in regards to what do you do when you have that negative voice on the side of your shoulder? Are you going to befriend it? Are you going to listen to it? Are you going to, but how can we start to reframe those voices on the side of our shoulder? And one of the ways is we have to be aware that that voice is even there. And we have to be aware of how often that little friend comes to see us and starts to tell us, no, I don't think you can do that.
Yeah.
Jeff, you want to have, 1,000 podcasts? I don't know. That's too many. Like, it might take too long, right? Whatever those little voices are, how do we start to reframe them? And basically, the first step is actually the awareness of when are we having those negative voices? Is it
Mm.
only around our career? Is it only around our sport? Is it all day long? Is it only at night when those thoughts come and start overwhelming us? When do they come and can we be aware of them? And then how are we going to reframe them? So it's called the, like, acknowledge and reframe, or I have an exercise called the flick and the reframe. And when you catch it, you have to say, okay, let's say, I don't know, I wake up in the morning, if you're talking about body image, like you said earlier, you wake up in the morning, you're like, ugh, I'm so ugly. Well, that's a flick. So we're going to put a rubber band around our wrist and we're going to flick and be like, oh, that was ugly. I recognize that's a negative thought, right? And now the second part of that is, how do we reframe that? And here's a pretty cool thing, and I've read it before, and I believe it to be true as well, is that positive affirmations are kind of bullshit. I love them and they're awesome and they serve a purpose. But if I think I'm ugly and I want to say my reframe is, I'm so beautiful, I'm lying to myself. So I have to figure out a way to bridge the gap so that I start to understand and believe the things to be true about myself. So if I wake up and I say, I'm ugly, I would flick. And the only reason you flick isn't to inflict pain, it's just the awareness of how
Yeah.
often am I flicking. And then we say, no. So if I'm not going to say I'm beautiful because I clearly don't think that if I'm saying I'm ugly, but what can I say that's true about myself that's positive? You know what? I kind of like my hair today. And you know, Jeff, you mentioned my vest. Like I got a cute little sporty spice outfit on today with my vest and my maroon shirt. Like I like my outfit. I feel good in this outfit. That's a truth. Guess what? My brain's going to take that truth. And now tomorrow I might be like, wow, I like my eyes. Wow, I really like my smile. Over a course of 3 to 4 weeks, I'm going to be like, I look pretty today.
Yeah.
But it doesn't start there. We have to slowly bridge the gap, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking, everything you're saying is so cool. And the idea of how about the person who's not strong enough to open up and say, I have these other positive things, and they can't knock that little person off their shoulder and they get stuck in that I'm ugly.
Well, I would have a really strong conversation about the growth mindset, right? The fixed mindset versus a growth mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Because do they really want to change it? Are they willing to try new things to try to? I did that exercise with a team in Oregon, and I gave them that assignment virtually. And I saw them a month later at a live event in Dallas. And two of the girls came up to me and actually said to me, I no longer have that voice on the side of my shoulder.
Yeah.
Simply by doing that exercise, like starting to make that awareness of what those
Yeah.
thoughts are and just starting to be a little bit kinder to ourselves. Of course, the
Yeah.
other one that everybody talks about is like, right, how would you speak to your best friend if your best friend told you I'm ugly? What would you say? Because we really need to be our own best friend, but a lot of times we don't look at it that way. So then we think it's okay to talk so negatively about ourselves when that's the whole self-love, self-care. And it's hard. We're all very hypercritical of ourselves. The reason I'm really good at what I do is because I'm a recovering perfectionist, type A, people pleaser, harder on myself than anyone else, has the drive. No, you don't need to tell me where I'm screwing up because I already know. And I've already planned 6 months ahead as how I want to fix it. Right. So understanding that and then growing from that and starting to let a lot of the BS
Yeah.
go, everything changes. And I think a lot of the work, it can be done on the subconscious too. You
Okay.
probably didn't get it off my website or wherever you got my history and background. I also in the last 3 to 4 years have done a lot of courses and work on working with the subconscious. So for the sake of helping my athletes that have limiting beliefs about themselves and lack of self-confidence and all of those things, I actually have a master certification in what's called MER. And MER is mental emotional release from the meditative state. So it is almost like a hypnosis type of state where I can help them go into their subconscious and get rid of their limiting beliefs, their fears, their anxieties. And it's a very quick process. It's not a one and done because yes, I can get rid of their fears and anxieties to the point where sometimes the next week they're tumbling and they're doing all the things and they're like, what the heck just happened? And I'm like, right, because I eliminated your fear from the subconscious level. But we still have to continue to put the positive in. If we go back to old ways and old habits, then our brain is going to get the habits are going to win. So I have a whole system in regards to helping them eliminate it. And then what kind of positive things are we going to put back in?
So you just made me think of something. I wasn't even planning on asking you, talking about this, but you said, tumbling.
Yes.
So when you said confidence tumbling, I'm thinking Simone Biles twisties. You know what I mean? Like, can you talk about that? Like, I'm sitting there watching the Olympics when that was what 4 years ago when that was going on,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying the twisties, and I'm like, what the heck are they talking about? And then the more you listen to it, the more you hear it, the more you understand it. But can you talk about what goes on in a person like Simone Biles' head? She's like the best in the world, and then she just can't perform because her brain gets in the way.
Yeah. And it's happening more. It's happening more and more. I have a lot of clients that have mental blocks, very similar to that. You can call it the twisties. You can go, and what it is fear. Fear takes over, and our body becomes in fight or flight. So when fear is so at the forefront of our brain, it basically is just trying to keep us safe, right? So if we have too many thoughts going on in our head, or fear is creeping in, anxiety starts to creep in, overwhelm starts to creep in, our brain is going to go, sorry, I'm just going to put you in fight or flight, and we're not going to be able to do anything. And I have kids that are like, it's really weird because I actually think I can do it. Like I'm standing on the mat ready to go tumble, and I do the round off back handspring, and then I just blank, like it just goes away.
Yeah.
And it does,
Like,
because they're in that fight or flight mode. And unfortunately, the overwhelm, the anxiety, a lot of those things, and I think we'll talk about this in a little bit as well in regards to the mental health component. 9 times out of 10, and I think I watched Simone's story as well. I watched her Netflix story. When we get those kinds of things, it's not only what's happening in our sport.
right.
Right. So a lot of time when kids come to me, I'll say, is there anything going on in your life that could be a contributing factor that's causing you stress or sadness or harm or anything? And
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, it's my grandma just died, or my parents got divorced, or I'm worried about this. And so though all of those thoughts become part of it as well.
Right.
It's not just about the sport.
No. And you think about, the World Series, Aaron Judge, right? If you watch that, I mean, this guy is supposedly one of the best ever, right? And at that high moment, he just couldn't pull the trigger,
Yep.
and it's crazy, like what's going on in their minds,
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that I think pops into this situation, and I want to ask you about this too, is where's my phone? It's over here. So these things, man, these things are such a problem, but they're such a gift.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the word comparison, when these young kids or even older athletes, they start comparing themselves to other people,
Yep.
then their brain goes off in all these different directions. So can you talk about that? Is how do you coach athletes on is not comparing themselves to each other? How do you handle that to keep them from doing that?
Yeah, it's the whole comparison is the thief of joy. So when we understand that when we compare, we're just robbing ourselves of joy, because
Mm,
we're now focusing on things that are not within our control. And I speak all the time to organizations and coaches and teams about, are you focusing on yourselves, or are you focusing on your competition? If yes, it's cool to watch film and everything, but if you're not focusing on what and to be prepared, but if you're so focused on everything that's going on outside of you, when are you giving yourself that work, if that makes sense? Like
yeah,
focusing on yourself and focusing on what you need to do to just be better,
yeah,
because we can't control what we can't control. And so if we're comparing, and of course these things for sure play a huge role. I just did a huge challenge to the coaches, and they actually loved it so much that they implemented it. They implemented it with their whole gym, because I shared with them how many of you go to sleep. So this is a simple question. How many of you get home from a long day at work or from practice or from whatever, and you just want to like chill back, and like, this is our decompress time. We're just going to get on our phone and just chill out and just relax, right? The average watch time of a TikTok, I think, is like 8 seconds. So if we're on our phone for an hour to 2 hours, that's like a million bits of information going into our brain.
mm,
So I asked the question, how many of you get decent sleep, or you go to bed and you get 6 to 8 hours of sleep? And they all raise their hand. And then I say, and how many of you wake up tired? And they all raise their hand. How many of us as adults? I mean, we do it too.
yeah,
Right. And so understanding that when we go to bed, then our poor brain is trying to cipher through those million bits of information and process it. So we actually never get into that deep sleep that we need to rest and recover our bodies. So all of my athletes, we talk a lot about morning routines and night routines, and
yeah,
not and letting your brain recover, because these are the reasons why mental health and anxiety and all of those self-confidence things is a huge problem.
Mm.
Did you
So
know
how about,
kids over the age of 15 right now, kids over 65% of kids over the age 15 right now are on some sort of anxiety or antidepressant medicine.
right.
65%. It's crazy.
Now, Jen, from where you're sitting with your experience, your education, do you feel that that is reasonable, or that just the doctors are just copping out? Hey, just take this drug. It's easy. Let's just move on.
I think it's both. I think it's both. And I also think it's a quest, and it's why I love to do parent education, which we didn't really talk about, but I love to do parent education, because also when parents don't know what they don't know, they're like, I just want to fix my kid. Cool. If we
Right.
go to the doctor, then cool. If you're telling me you're a doctor, they need medicine, I'm just going to do it.
Right.
I'm a big naturopathic girl, so I'm not a fan.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I believe in good, healthy foods,
Yeah.
lots of supplements, sunshine,
Yep. Yep.
the whole gamut
And,
of
and
how we treat
how
our
about
brain.
but how about just open discussion? You know what I mean? Like
Oh,
that,
yeah.
talk to the kids, talk to the adults, talk to them first before oh, here, take this pill.
Yeah,
You know,
100%. And
find
they
out
don't,
what's going on. Yeah.
you're 100% right. And
You
what's
know,
crazy is I know that it's really, really bad when I have kids that I just worked with this weekend that said, if you tell me not to be on my phone for an hour before I go to bed and I can wake up and actually feel good, I will do it. Before it was like, oh no, I'm addicted, I can't do it, oh, that's
yeah.
too hard. And I give challenges to all my clients, and like they're craving it because they don't understand how it
Yeah.
creates that overwhelm in our brain. And
Yep.
I'm getting ready to launch my new app. And so you and I have probably grown up in an era, right, where we didn't have phones when we were growing up.
Phones.
So we
There's
know
no
what
internet.
no internet, no computers. So we know what it's like,
Yeah.
right? This generation of kids doesn't know what it's like. So when I started, I'm, like I said, launching my app, so I'm more on my phone, and I'm doing research, and I'm looking at,
Right.
I'm comparing and seeing what the competition is out there and doing all of
Right.
those things. About a month ago, I started getting heart palpitations. I was getting headaches. My eyes were bugging out, and I was not sleeping worth it. Darn.
Really.
And it took about 3 days where I was like, oh my gosh, this is what it feels like. This is that overwhelm, like anxiety. I felt like almost like anxious. And I was like,
Yeah.
I do not like this. And my
Right.
app can wait. If it takes a little bit longer, I'm
Right.
definitely not doing this. But they don't know, nor do they connect the dots that it's caused by this,
Right.
if that makes sense, because it's
Yeah.
just all they know. I'm just overwhelmed. I'm going
And,
to school, I'm going to sports, I'm just overwhelmed.
right.
But
And they're not mature enough to understand. And like you said, they don't know any better because they've never been without.
right.
You know.
And then the parents don't know any better
Yeah.
either. And so parent education is huge. And we as parents, we want the information too. Like,
Right.
we want to know how to better support and help our kids. So I tell the kids, hey, I'm going to give you this challenge, and I'm going to share it with your parents.
Yeah.
So challenge your parents to do it as well. See if they feel
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. And you know what else? You know, this is not a knock, and I'm not saying that parents are bad or anything like that, because I have three of my own, but they're older, you know.
Right.
And my kids grew up in a day where there was no iPad, you know,
Mhm.
there was no iPhone, you know,
Mhm.
and but today it's like the technology becomes a babysitter,
Yep.
you know, and the parents kind of rely, go watch that, go turn that on, go check that out, and it'll buy them some time to do whatever they're doing.
Mhm.
So my question to you is there a certain age that you notice that when the kids start to become a little bit more mature around this, to recognize it and to work with it, or is it just across the board?
As far as an age where it's appropriate to have it, or an age where they start to recognize it and connect the dots of
Right.
the
That
like
where they recognize
anxiety and the
and connect the
overwhelm.
dots. Yeah.
I feel like everyone is different. I know
Okay.
it's um I have clients as young as 6, 9. Um, but I would say it's we have like all these different perfect storms of the 12 to 14 to 16 boys 15 to 18, where hormones play a part of how our brain
Yeah.
develops, right? So we have hormones, we have access to information, not only a lot of information, but information that's not even appropriate for us to be, to be consuming, because our brains don't know how to process it all and it's too much. So I mean, I think across the board, and I think everyone is different too, genetically, if there's any
Yeah.
predisposed things that happen as well. So
All right. How about this question? This one, everybody's going to be different here, but you talk to athletes, you work with parents, you work with coaches. How do you help them build up just mental resilience?
mhm.
So they can wake up in the morning and literally just focus and face the day.
Mhm. So mental resilience, and this is one of the biggest things that I do talk to parents about, because right, the generation that we grew up with parents that didn't talk, that didn't share anything. They didn't tell us how to do anything, right? So we just kind of figured things out on our own.
Right.
And we came home when the street lights came on at night, and they didn't have any clue what we did all day long,
Yep.
whatever. And now we have, so what that created was, then we as parents, then now we want to overshare, because our parents never told us about anything, never told us about sex, never told us about like nothing. And we had to figure it out on ourselves. And some of us had traumatic incidences in
Yeah.
regards to that, because we didn't know what we didn't know. So
Right.
then as a parent, we're going to take the things that we loved about our parents and the things that we wished our parents would have done, and now we're going to parent. So now we as parents, because we weren't told anything, we have now over communicated with our kids and probably shared about sex when our kids are 6, because we wanted to make sure they knew it. And that's probably too young.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the next generation. So what's happened is, we've wanted to help our kids, rightfully so. It's not like our intent is wrong. We want to help our kids to the best of our ability, not realizing that now we're taking away their problem solving ability. And now
Yeah.
kids don't have to problem solve. And now just going and ordering food in a restaurant is incredibly stressful to many kids.
Yeah.
They have social anxiety to where they can't even talk to someone in a restaurant.
There's too many choices on the menu.
Yeah, and it's too overwhelming, because we as parents are doing everything for our kids. So I give the parents homework assignments as well. Like, you need to start letting your kids fail, and
Yeah.
reward
Mm.
them for failing. Fail forward, fail fast, fail often. I want you to fail, and I want you to tell me what you learned, and then I want you to tell me what the solution that you came up for that is.
I like
Because
that.
failure equals growth. Right? So the more that we fail, the more that we're learning something, the more that we're growing, the more that we're creating mental resilience. And the best way to create mental resilience is to do really hard things. And believe it or not, by doing hard things, guess what that also creates? It creates confidence.
Yeah.
So going out and doing the hard thing and actually being successful at it, or not, but then doing it again and finally learning about it, that actually builds confidence. Courage creates confidence.
Yep.
I teach that in my beast mode animal system. It's the lion.
So confidence. So let's think about, you have the mental side, you got the physical side, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we look at both together, and we mentioned it before. Most athletes, they spend so much time on the physical side of things,
Mm-hmm.
making the body bigger, stronger, faster. And like, you think about, if you ever watched like the NFL Combine on TV,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there's no mental talk in there. They talk about the Wonderlic and this all, but they never talk about what a guy's score was, or how was his mental psychological evaluation. They never talk about any of that stuff. It's just, oh, he can run this fast, he can jump this high. Can you talk about, the idea of how does mental preparation, mental focus, mental wellness help with the physical side?
I mean, I think it's everything, actually. I mean, right? Because if we can't show up, if we're not mentally able to even show up from a physical standpoint. Yes, to your point, physical come, like in the past, physical has come first. Unfortunately, now with today's society and the mental health issues and everything, the mental side is getting a much harder look, and people are starting to acknowledge that we need to work on it. But the mental prep, I mean, back in the day for football players, the mental prep was just watching film, right?
Film.
I'm mentally preparing. that wasn't necessarily visualization, imagery, running through how to be prepared mentally, going through my mental routine, getting in the flow state, calming my nerves down and being able to self-regulate my nerves so that I can stay at that flow state level and not get too high and not get too low.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah.
How do you coach people on how to stay calm and regulate? I mean, you see so many people just losing control, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you help them do that?
I mean, I have a couple of my go-tos that are basic but very effective. And one of the biggest things just to have the athlete understand, and many athletes know it, but they don't know how to apply it in the moment, right? So when we're in our flow state, we are truly in the present moment. So fear only exists in the past. And if we know that anxiety only exists in the future, the best place for us to stay is in the present moment. And when we can stay in the present moment and we can literally take things step by step by step, or skill by skill by skill, that overwhelm doesn't come in because we're so focused on being present. So one of the best ways to help eliminate anxiety is to actually be in the present moment. Now, yes, we might need to do some things to teach about that, but the premise of it is, if you just take things step by step, if a quarterback just has to say step by step, two-step drop, read, pass, throw, follow through, that's a very direct technical thing that if that's all that he's thinking about, he's not thinking about what's happening in the fourth quarter. And he's not getting too overwhelmed by the fact that they're down 21-0. We have to stay in that like present moment. And that's kind of step one, is just helping them to learn how to stay in the present moment and not get too far ahead of yourself. And then there's also some brain hacks. I use the tongue on the roof of the mouth trick. So if you put
What's
your
that
tongue,
one?
if you put your tongue on the roof of your mouth, just to the hard palate. So, and then you slide your tongue back to the heart, to the squishy part, simply just taking your tongue and sliding it backwards. From a neuroscience perspective, you can't be nervous and anxious and actually do that activity because you're
Really?
using a different side of your brain. And so I give it to athletes who that's one that my baseball player swears by it. He's like, oh my gosh, the tongue on the roof of the mouth thing works. The second I put my foot in the batter's box, I just put my tongue in the roof of my mouth, and then I put my second foot in, and it just brings you back to center. And you don't have time to be thinking about, I wonder what the pitch is going to be. Your body's just reacting. So now you're trusting in your skills and your own body awareness, because that is the athletic part, right? That's the physical part.
Yeah.
Trust your body, trust your training. You know what to do. When we get in trouble is when we let our brain take over and our brain starts to go, spiral.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. I never
Yeah.
heard that one. I gotta do that.
Yeah, I got to do that. And then the other one would be there's all kinds of breathing techniques like box
Yeah.
breaths. So I do box breaths with individual clients, and then it is actually a really, really great exercise to do with an entire team to anchor them all in the same energy so that they're all on the same page.
Yeah.
So when you have all this crazy and I've done it with football players, I've done it with cheerleaders, literally backstage right before they go on. When you have an entire group of people doing the same thing at the same time, and box breathing brings you back to the present as well, but it's also anchoring them all together so that they can go out there and do the thing and be in sync and kind of stay in that bubble that they
Yeah.
need to be from a cohesion standpoint as a team.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I'd love to see 110 college football players doing the box breathing at once.
Yep.
That would be
did it
cool.
with a football team that I was at in Ohio, and they all sat there and they all did it together, and it just literally calms your
Yeah.
parasympathetic nervous system, and you can feel it when everyone
Yeah.
is just breathing. You can feel it, and they were like, "Whoa, that's pretty cool." No,
Yeah.
it's not fluffy, it's not foofy. It's
Yeah.
literally designed to regulate you. There, I forget. Do you know there's a team that actually has there's an NFL team currently right now that has a breath work sideline coach. It is,
Really?
I was so excited to see that. I'm like, oh my gosh, they literally have a breathwork guy that will help guys regulate and get them in the state that they need to be in. It's awesome. I
That
love
is
to see it.
cool. Do you know what team that is?
I don't know, but we could easily
No.
Google it. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure it's probably front and center.
So you mentioned before you do work with the parents too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is just popping into my head is the older parents, let's say, if I have a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, 17-year-old athlete, I'm probably typically in my early 40s,
Mm-hmm.
maybe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who may have not been through your programs, may have not been educated on how to handle things. So when you're working with parents on keeping them emotionally under control, how do you handle that? What kind of things do you bring to the table? How do the parents react to that? And can you expand on that?
Oh, I love that you said that because I actually did just I talked to about 100 parents while I was in Florida. And the first night, only like 5 parents showed up to our parent session. And so the owner was like all nervous and everything. And I was like, you know what? Whoever shows up, we're going to
Yeah.
educate. But it was a Saturday night. And then on Sunday night, 100 parents showed up. So
Wow.
everybody came to the Sunday night session. And I openly shared with them, up until about 3 or 4 years ago, I actually didn't want to talk to parents because who am I to be the one telling parents, hey, by the way, we're all jacking up our kids? Like, it's a hard message to
Yeah.
say, to say. And so I literally was like, I'm not gonna, I'm just gonna help the kid, and I'll give the parent like little communication, little tips. If you hire me, you as a parent will get homework as well, so that we can create that cohesion between parent support and athlete, because then that helps everyone be more successful. But in general, it's kind of an uncomfortable situation. And then finally I got to the point where I'm learning so much about how I jacked up my own kids. How can I not share it?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
we need to know more. And they
Yeah.
are so receptive, and they want to know how to better communicate with my kid.
Yep.
Why does my kid get in the car and cry all the time? Why are my kids unmotivated? Today's generation is lazy, unmotivated, no drive. And so when I can speak to that and share with them that these athletes' brains are not developed the way that ours were, literally from a chemical standpoint.
Yeah.
So for us to have expectations of our athlete, of their 15-year-old that we had when we were coaching, it's like comparing apples
Yeah.
and not even a fruit. Like, they're so different. So when they
Yeah.
understand, oh wow, my daughter or my son's brain is different. Now I need to communicate in a different way and share things in a different way, and maybe listen to them as well and see what's going on with them. Because if we constantly just tell them they're lazy and they're unmotivated, like the kids aren't going to want to respond, and then they shut down, and then
Well,
they,
they'll start to believe it,
yeah, and then
right?
exactly, then they start to believe it, and then they shut down, and then now there's no communication between parent and athlete. So
So what was that like for you as, like you said, the parent who's dealing with it, to become vulnerable, to share your experience to these 100 parents? Like that must have been nerve-wracking.
it used to be, but I find that, when we are vulnerable and we share, hey, here's how I jacked up my daughter or my son, or here's some mistakes that I've made, here's some of the things that I learned from my coach. And it's so, when they know that I'm included in it, I'm not talking at you, I'm part of it. I'm learning right along with you, and when you share things with me, I'm learning as well. And when I share my stories that I share about vulnerability and some of the ways that I've jacked up my kids, there's parents in the audience that are crying.
Yeah.
Like, it hits home because we all can relate. Like, nobody's perfect.
Yep.
And when we all understand, we're all just trying to do the best that we can with what we
Yeah.
have in
Yep.
today's society. So if we all give each other a little bit of grace, and we can learn and help and support and understand each other, it just makes things
Yeah.
that much more rewarding. So I actually, now it's my favorite thing to do, is to talk to parents, because I'm not
Cool.
afraid anymore, and I'm not afraid to be vulnerable. I'm not afraid to share the stories of how I've messed up my own kids and what I've learned by it and how I've recovered from it. And
Yeah.
and if they can learn, the same way and then do the same thing, then we're all better off,
Oh yeah.
then we're raising resilient young kids
Yeah.
that can now handle life, not only their sport, but can handle life as well.
Life. Yeah. So what advice can you give to the parents? I love going down this parent line because obviously I'm one too, right? And advice to the parents when their 14, 15, 18, 20-year-old, whoever, comes in and says, Mom, you just don't understand.
Yeah.
And they just run out of the room. Like, you just don't get it. You just don't understand. And leaves the parents sitting there saying, do I get it? Do I understand? What am I missing?
Yeah. So one of the things that I tell parents is, believe it or not, a lot of times we as parents, we want to protect our kids. And so we know best because we have all the experience and we've been through it. So we know what they're going through. So we need to tell them all the things as to why they need to do X, Y, and Z. And my advice to the parents is actually try just zipping it
It's
and
so hard.
actually just asking the questions. You're
Mm.
right. I don't understand. Can you please help me understand? I am trying to understand what you're going through, but I didn't grow up in the same way that you did. And so I'm starting to understand there's some like differences. So can you please share with me what you're going through? My son was a 4.3 GPA. He had a scholarship to go to University of San Diego in the officers program at University of San Diego, super hard to get into. And long story short, I knew something was up. He was avoiding my calls, all the things. And he came to me and I had advice from my coach. And I said, I know something's coming. I don't know what it is, but I think it has to do with this officer school and his scholarship. And she said, here's what you're going to do. You need to shut up and you need to not say a word and you need to gulp whatever you have to do. And you need to just ask probing questions to get him to share with you what he's really feeling. And I said, okay. And I sat across from him at a table in a lobby, a hotel lobby. And he said, Mom, I'm not going to college. I'm enlisting. And
Mm.
I was like, what? No way. Like, and I didn't say anything. And I said, okay. And I'm like, what brought you to this conclusion? Have you thought of the pros and cons? And he said, yes, I thought of the pros. And you see, I really want to be a recon Marine. And when I'm a recon Marine, it's between 22 and 24 is the sweet spot when you get accepted. And if I were to go to 4-year college, I would miss that window of being 22 to 24 to become a recon Marine. So with no experience, because you also need at least 2 years, but minimal military experience in order to become a recon Marine. So I just don't want to miss the boat. So I'm going to enlist and I'm going to try to do the recon, rookie recon program. And he went into all these things. He had literally researched it. I had no idea.
He mapped it all out.
I'm not from a military family. I didn't know. And I said, okay. I said, so like, what are the cons? And he said, Mom, I want this so bad. The only con was telling you because I know you're going to be disappointed in me.
Oh boy. Mm.
And I was like, wow. And also knowing what I do for a living, right? Who am I to tell all my clients, go after your dreams, except you, son, because that's a
Yeah.
really freaking hard one. That's really big. Like, don't do
And
that.
you know what just happened? His fear, I'm gonna guess here, his fear of you not being proud or being disappointed in him was probably one of your most proudest moments,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. It's the
Uh,
lesson that I now share with all parents, because
yeah.
if we listen and we ask probing questions and we really truly want to understand, where are they coming from? How can I have a good relationship? How can I communicate with them? How can we walk through this together? And how can I support you? Because kids, number one, from their DNA, their number one thing in life is to make their parents proud.
Yeah.
So at any time, if our kids do something and they don't think that we're going to be proud, they're going to get angry. They're going to start rebelling. They're going to do all the things to annoy us because they already know probably what we're thinking, because we either tell them all the time or we're cutting them down or we're not giving them the time of day. Most of them want our attention. They want
Yeah.
time with us, but we don't have it because we're too busy trying to make a living to support the sports that they're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my God. So on point.
Yeah.
So you talk about so many different things. You have so many different programs. What's the one favorite thing you love standing up there and talking about?
Oh, today, right now, it changes, it ebbs and flows. Um, I think right now I've really, really been enjoying educating parents, coaches, nurses, doesn't really matter, like on the power of our brain, like just the neuroscience of our brain, the power of manifesting, the written word, the how we can truly get what we want if we understand how our brain works. So just
Yeah,
educating on the power of the brain, the power of this and how it's
yeah,
affecting them, from morning routines to night routines to sharing that knowledge with parents so they can better connect with their children. I think that's been a really powerful thing as of late that I really like to see. And I love to hear when parents are like, oh my gosh, I tried that thing that be
and it
quiet in the
worked.
car, be
Yeah,
quiet in the car and it worked. And oh my gosh, now my son like wants to go have lunch with me. Like whoever would have thought that. And
yeah,
it just warms my heart. I
that's
love it.
so cool. So you're coaching teams and individuals, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do you see similarities, similar challenges in the team and the individual, or is it vastly different from different perspectives?
Um, a little bit of, I mean, a little bit of both. So the big thing that would be a similarity across the board is I can ask one person, how many of you know that you lack confidence in yourselves or you have that voice on the side of your shoulder with the self-doubt thing? And I can ask an entire team, and an entire team, 90% of the kids will raise their hand as well. So it's across the board, the lack of self-confidence, whether it's an individual or whether it's a team. Now, how it affects a team is a little bit different, right? Because now we know that everyone on the team is struggling with a little something something. So what do we do to like bring that team together and help them to perform at their highest
Yeah,
level out on the field? So I actually have a pre-competition or a pre-game day routine mentally that I do with the athletes to get them ready, to help them stay in the present moment, to help allow their brains to not be too overwhelmed so that they can just trust in their training and trust in all the things that their coaches have taught them to do. And so they
yeah,
can be in that like flow state and just do what their bodies are trained to do
yeah.
and get out of that and basically get out of their own way with their brain.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So you've been doing this for a long time,
I
right?
have.
Is there any one moment that kind of stands out? Like, hey, you know what? My coaching, my training, my mindset, attention, and development has really impacted this person, this family, this team. Anything like just jump out at you?
Yeah, I would say I kind of have two put me on the not put me on the map, but like my two proudest things were Keaton Slovis. He was the starting quarterback at USC, and he played football with my son. And his whole goal was to go to USC. And I got the opportunity to work with his team as a high school football team. And then I got the opportunity to work with him as he was getting ready to enter college. And his whole goal was to be the starting quarterback at USC as a freshman. And that's not an easy feat, as you
No.
know, high
Oh no.
school, as college football, let alone USC. So we worked really hard over the summer and mapped everything out, and the whole power of the written word, and write exactly what you want to have happen down. And then we would talk every week, and it would be basic things like, hey, so we're all gonna, like, the coaches invited us to go watch film. And I'm like, do it. Like, you need to do everything that your coach is asking you. So there were 7 quarterbacks. By the end of the summer, he was one of 2 quarterbacks showing up to the non-mandatory film set.
Yeah,
That's going to get you ahead. So
that's huge.
talking about leadership and things like that, having him write down his goals every single week. We always did that. And I have it. You can go back into my post and find it where I have it written down, where it's written down that he wrote down and he signed it, that he would be the starting quarterback at USC. And I also had him write down his stats and what his stats would be at the end of the season.
Now, did you talk to him post it on your Instagram page or
Yeah,
anything?
it's on. Yeah, I'll pull it up. It's
Yeah,
obviously a ways back because it was way back in the day.
yep.
But
That had to be so
he
cool.
yeah, he wasn't the starting quarterback. He was number 2 guy. And so it appeared, right? It appeared as though he wasn't going to be the number 1 guy. And that is the hardest time to still show up as though you're going to be the number 1 guy, not knowing what could happen and just assuming I'm the number 2 guy. I've been the number 2 guy all summer. I'm the number 2 guy. And then number 1 guy blew out his knee in the second quarter of the first game. And Keaton became the starting quarterback at halftime and went on to be the starting quarterback for the rest of the season and had an amazing season, amazing year. He's got drafted to the NFL. He's yeah. So
it's amazing, and it's
and
always
his stats were exactly what we wrote down.
Oh my God!
Like legitimate, like the exact numbers that we wrote down.
That's freaky.
Yeah, it's the power of the written word. I'm telling you.
Yeah, yeah, but it's crazy, and it always comes out is someone's misfortune becomes someone's fortune.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to be prepared.
And you have to be prepared for that. And that's so funny that you just said that, because that takes me to my favorite team one. There was a cheerleading team. So when my daughter was a world cheerleader, and you'd go to, I don't know, there 100,000 people go to this cheer competition. It is the largest cheer competition at NCAA in Dallas. Anyways, I was in the audience watching my daughter cheer way back in the day. And there's a team called Orange, Stingray All-Stars Orange. They were world champions. They were amazing. And I had just started my business. And I sat in that audience and I said, one day I'm going to work with a team like that. And then I had the opportunity to work at Stingrays in Marietta, Georgia. And I was working at Stingrays, but I wasn't really allowed to work with the really good teams. I could only work with these level teams, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I'd been at the gym like 3 or 4 times. I traveled to Marietta a couple of times that year. And I got a call from the coach. And the coach said, I don't know what to do. Like, can you do something with them when you come next time? And I was like, yep. So it was 30 days before Worlds. And they had 38 kids with 32 super seniors, meaning 32 of the athletes, it was their last time they could be a cheerleader in that division. That's a big deal. Like, and no one quits on Orange. Like, they're literally like on the quest to be world champions. And I was like, sure, I would love to. Like, it was my opportunity. Like, oh my gosh, he's asking me to come in, even though it's a shit show. He's like asking me to come in.
Yeah.
So I said, sure. So I took them upstairs without the coaches, and we went upstairs and we had our little powwow, and we talked, and I taught them a concept, and I asked them, like, they had girls quitting, they weren't getting along with the coaches weren't getting along. Like, it was a whole camaraderie of things that were going wrong. And so I just basically said, I taught them a concept, and I said, do you guys really want this? Do you believe that you can do it? They all said yes, but this, but that. And I was like, there's going to be no buts. You are going to take ownership for this. You are the athletes on the floor. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. And they all were like bought in. They were all like, okay, this is what we need to do. And I said, I'm still going to coach the coaches. I'm going to have them. I'm going to take the information you gave me back to the coaches in regards to the dissemination between the coaches. But you guys need to own this, because you're the ones that want to be world champions. And they hadn't been world champions. I think the last world champion they had was in 2014. And this was like 2019. So it had been like 6 years.
Yeah.
And they were looking for it. And this was going to be the year that they needed to do it. They got their bid on the first competition, and the next 6 competitions, they fell every single competition. So they were out of the running because they could not get it together. So no more competitions except for Worlds. That's when they called me in 30 days before we did our thing. And I actually said to them, you guys, I know you don't realize this, but 8 years ago when I was sitting in the stands, I said, one day I'm going to work with Orange. And I said, and because of your misfortune, because something is not going wrong, that is how I finally got the opportunity, because the coaches don't know what else to do. And they're like, whatever, maybe you can help them. And I said, so you being a shit show is actually my dream come true. And they were like, oh my gosh. I said, I'm just honored and blessed to be here. Now let's go get a world championship ring. Like, let's go. And it was super cool. and they went on to be world champions. And I have the world champion video is on my Instagram for sure. You can pull that up. But and it
They
was
should have videotaped that speech.
it's my, no kidding, no kidding. It's actually going to be a course. It's called UFW, and UFW stands for unfuckwithable, to be unfuckwithable, and it's actually a word. And I use it specifically for shock value for the teenagers, and they love it. Yeah, they're like, whoa, and they're like, and UFW means regardless of criticism or praise, I am at peace with myself. So it goes way, way deeper than just you can't mess with me.
Yeah.
It has to do with criticism and praise and being at peace with yourself. And at the end, when they became world champions, they actually presented me with a world championship ring.
Oh,
and
cool.
It had UFW on the
No
ring.
way.
Yeah, it's actually.
So where do you keep it? I was going to definitely say I got to see that thing.
Yeah, it's right here.
Oh man, look at that.
Let's see here.
Oh wow, that is so cool.
And then it has my name, and then it has, I don't know where right there. It says UFW on the bottom.
Yeah, look at that. Oh, that is so cool.
Super cool. So
and do you ever wear it out and let people see it?
The only time I wear it is when I'm at like a big event, or like Worlds or whatever, because everybody wants to see who's got the Worlds rings on and who's who's who and all that. So I do, but it makes me nervous because it's like my pride and joy.
That is so cool.
Yeah. So.
It's amazing, like those kind of things, just by looking at that.
Yeah.
It puts you right back in the moment,
100%. 100%.
That's so cool. So I'm going to ask you this then. All right. So you're working with these girls, you're working with guys, they're elite athletes, all kinds of cool stuff's going on. How do you help them maintain, let's say, motivation and discipline? Like when you said before, when things are starting to suck, like how do you keep them going?
I have a couple of exercises that I actually do with them, whether it be a writing exercise, but really a lot of times when either teams are struggling or even an individual, like starting to give up on the dream, I'm never going to make it, it's getting too close, thinking about switching schools again because they're not going to be the starting XYZ, whatever. Yeah. I really have them reconnect with their why. Like, why are you doing this? So I typically would have them do some sort of journal assignment around what is your why? Is that still your why? Or are you doing it for the sake of mom and dad or whatever? Because that lack of motivation sometimes could be because they actually are done, they've served their purpose and they no longer want to do it. But connecting to their why is a big one, because it still takes discipline and structure to be able to go after your dreams.
Yeah. Yeah, that's big. So how about this? Just made me think of this. Is every time you keep saying stuff, I'm thinking of more and more things to ask you, which is good. But parents, let's say the kid has given up on their why. Hey, my why's past me. I achieved my why, whatever. Now, but the parent, and they want to stop, and the parents want them to keep going. How do you coach to that?
Usually, I just talked about it at the last parent meeting that I was at, is I always, even when I work with kids, the first thing I say is, do you want to be helped? Do you have a problem? Or is mom and dad making you do this? And if they say, no, I don't need any help, mom and dad just really want me to be successful, I don't really care, I want to go play lacrosse, I don't really care about football, or I don't care about cheerleading or whatever. And I just then don't accept the money and we're done. Because if the kid doesn't want to do it, right, they can't be expected to do it by living vicariously through the parent. Right. So understanding that, but then also from a parent perspective, as long as you have family, I'm going to call them family rules, where you have to be doing a sport or have a job or an orchestra or drama club, whatever. Like, you can't just do nothing at home. So what is it going, what do you want to do? Then 9 times out of 10, the parent's like, okay, and I will tell parents as well, like, if they don't want to do it, like, at the end of the day, what do you want for your child? Do you want your child to be happy, healthy? Look at the mental health that's going on in today's world. Is it so bad that your kid stays on the JV team another year and is happy and has a great group of friends and is healthy and is having fun versus having
Yeah.
all this pressure and being miserable, and because it's not really something that's like he's all about, but he's doing it for
Yeah.
the sake of the fun. If he's happy and healthy, why
Yeah.
does it matter? Unless you are trying to live out an unfulfilled dream that you have, that you're, and to get them to start to see and recognize that is kind of the first step, where a lot of times parents are like, oh, actually, yeah. Or
Yeah.
it could be, but I wished I would have stuck with it. Now I'm really trying to keep him to stick with it. Okay. So is that your dream? But is that his dream? Did you ask him?
Yeah.
Have you asked him, like, do you really want to see if you could be the best?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That's cool. That's cool. So think about the mental aspects of sports.
mhm.
How have you seen the mental side of coaching evolve over the years?
Oh, yeah. It's gone, I mean, I think it ebbs and flows. And it's right now in today's society, coaches are quitting more than ever because it's too hard, because of a parent expectation for the coaches. Parents are now with the whole NIL and all of that, like,
Yeah.
you're not coaching anything. So I can pull my child at any given time and go do something else if I don't like what you're doing. So
Right.
there's no consistency for the coaches. The parents are trying to dictate, because they pay for the sport, what position kids will play in and that kind of stuff. And, or they're going to yank them, pull them, and take them somewhere else. So it's become very convoluted that way. But with the coaching, I think it, used to be super hardcore. We used to be able to brush things off and it didn't bother us. Now kids
Yeah.
shut down. You can't have harsh, criticism on athletes. I'm not saying that everything that we went through when we were athletes was okay, but we also, I think, mentally were equipped a little bit better to handle some of it.
Right.
And yet today coaches are also struggling with really, it's everything is like everything positivity. We can only be positive. So that means we can't like get mad at them. And like, that's just fluff. And like, I can't be an effective coach by that. And so I think there's a happy medium. And that is one of the things that I do as well, that you can have super high expectations and still give positive feedback and still be able to give criticism based on the expectations that you set. But it really takes time to map it out and let the kids know, these are my expectations, this is what's going to happen, here's why you
Yep.
can't miss a practice, here's why you can't do XYZ. So having that clear cut plan from the beginning of the season is really, really important to help the coaches and the athletes know what is expected of them. Because I truly do believe that you can have super high expectations and produce world champions and still coach in a somewhat positive way
Yeah.
and still be really, really freaking hard on your athletes as well, from a
Yeah.
conditioning standpoint, from a mental standpoint. But it does all have to do with your words and how you're speaking to your athletes.
Yeah.
I have a master's certification in NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming. It's the whole you become what you speak about, and asking
Yep.
them, saying what you want to have happen, not saying what you don't want to have happen. So helping the coaches understand that their language is a big part of those expectations, and also then becomes a great part of their growth and success, when they're working with their teams and their athletes, because
I'd say,
you can get a lot done by your word choice.
yeah. I mean, what you just said, you become what you speak about. I mean, that is so true. You
Mhm.
keep you keep bitching and moaning. It's never gonna get better,
Yep.
but you keep singing the praise and excitement, and things get better.
Yep.
It's and also if you just smile more,
Yeah.
sometimes you just smile more, things make a difference. So
Yep.
so looking back at all these cool things you've done, you know, is there anything you would have changed? Anything you would have done differently?
I probably would have started sooner. Like, it's I was married and he had his own business as well. So the thought of having two entrepreneurs in the family was
Yeah.
kind of scary. And I had the insurance and I had all of those things. So it just didn't seem like it was the right time
Yeah.
to do that. I always wanted to, but I kind of just waited, and then the opportunity came about, and then with my job. So, I mean, I also do think everything's on God's timing too, because it just made me appreciate it all the more.
Yeah.
So I think that would be maybe start a little bit sooner, but the evolution and how everything has played out, I just think it played out exactly the way that it was supposed to. I'm always learning. I'm always doing new things. I've really gotten in touch with not having that perfectionism, and I have to have a set plan or goal. When I speak, I don't go prepared at all. I literally just speak from the heart. I just know that I'm going to um, be able to deliver whatever it is that my clients need in any given moment, because I'm going to be fully present for them.
Mm.
So I do so much better when I just let go and just allow my knowledge to help them where they are. Because a
Yeah.
lot of times, you can go with this perfect plan and this perfect PowerPoint, but then it's not what they need at the given moment. So, and anything can change between when they book with me and when I actually get there. So I really prefer just to be in the moment with them and be able to support them with what they need in that given moment in time.
So the next question then is, well, what does the future look like? I mean, you got so much more time in front of you, so many more things to do, so many more people to impact. What's the future looking like?
2025, Jen, let's see. I'm going to do more keynote speaking. So I've had a couple of opportunities to do some keynote speaking, and I really enjoyed that. I recognize the fact that I'm very passionate about what I do and I really want to make impact. And so I have an app coming out so that for the people that can't necessarily afford to have one-on-one training or can't afford for me to fly to their organization,
Yeah.
they will have a resource. So basically my app is going to house all of my content that people
Okay.
can purchase here and there for, or be a member of a community of parents, a community of athletes, a community of coaches, where it will be a little bit, more affordable.
Yeah.
Um, and then my impact and reach, my brand can start to get out there even more. I mean, I love to travel, but now I'm getting to the point where I get to pick and choose where I travel to. Um, I definitely don't want to work anymore. I definitely enjoy my Q life. And so I would like to just continue to work and live my passion. And that's the beauty of it, is that I don't ever feel like I'm working. So it all goes hand in hand. But as far as the traveling, it's getting a little bit, I do like to be home too. So,
All
um,
right. Good.
so yeah, keynote speaking, I think, and just the app, that's kind of where I'm focused. That's what I'm
Okay.
focused on.
So for those who want to hire you, how can they find you? What's phone numbers, email addresses, websites?
Yes, all of the above. So my website is getting redone. I mean, you can still get a hold of me through my old website, but I'm super excited because I'm upgrading my website to match my app. So that's all taking place in the next month. But social media, I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok. It's jengraffice.qlife. And then my website is just www.jengraffice.com. So
How do you spell Graffice so they can all get that one?
yes, it's www.jengraff as in Frank ICE.com.
Cool.
Yeah.
So hopefully you get a lot of business. A lot of people
Oh, I
ringing,
love that.
blowing up your phone, right?
Yes,
Blowing up your
blowing up
website.
my phone. Yes.
So Jen, we've talked about a ton of stuff tonight, and man, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this. Is there anything I haven't asked you, we haven't talked about that you think we should hit before we wrap it up?
No, I mean, I think you covered a lot. We went through a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
I
was
can sit
so
here and
much
talk to you
fun.
for
It
another
went by
2 hours.
fast.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
that
can
was
talk
fun.
to you for another 2, 3 hours and keep going, but I
I
don't think
love
you
it.
want to do that.
I love
So
it.
Jen, listen, I appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks for
Um,
having me.
I can't wait to get this out there for people to hear, and see.
Yeah.
It'll be on YouTube, it'll be on Apple Podcasts, it'll be on all the different podcast sites for everybody
Love
to
it.
see. So it's going to be fun for people to watch and just hear your perspective
Yes.
as a mindset coach.
Yep.
Because everybody thinks of the physical coach, the sport coach. I love the mindset coach because
Yes.
that is so important. Because without the mind, there is no physical,
Yep. You're
right?
right.
Right. So
Absolutely.
looking forward to seeing you out there doing your thing and the new
Thank you.
website and the new app. And
Yes.
love to have you back on.
Okay, that sounds awesome. Thanks for having me.
You're more than welcome.